Welcome to another episode of English Speaking Made Easy. As always, we are going to begin with our very first section, which is the Grammar Express. So, if you remember, this is like a follow-up or a continuation of what we've been discussing in the previous two episodes. We're going to do a little bit more on adjectives, and this time I'm going to tell you about the different kinds of adjectives that you will see in English. Okay? And this is very important for students, especially students of English and those who need to improve their written and speaking level of English. The first kind of adjective is what we've discussed in one of the previous episodes, and I'm just going to quickly run you through it for the sake of continuity. Okay? So, the first kind of adjective is what we call a descriptive adjective. As the name suggests, this kind of adjective actually gives you some additional information about the noun. It describes some additional feature about the nouns or the pronouns in a sentence. These are words like beautiful, ugly, silly, silent. All these are kind of words which we use to describe the noun or the pronoun. Now, why is that important? Like I said before, without a descriptive adjective in a sentence, we will never get to know the quality of what we are speaking about. Like for example, the flowers have a smell. Now that sentence in itself is so bland because, okay, do they smell good? Do they smell bad? What does it smell like? It doesn't tell you anything. That's where a descriptive adjective comes into play. It gives you a little bit of more information about the smell of the flower. So, if you bring in the descriptive adjective, the sentence gets a new flavor. See, so we bring in the adjective beautiful. The beautiful flowers have a pleasant smell. So, I think when you hear a sentence like that, it makes more sense. What kind of flowers they are, what kind of smell they emit, and that is why we use the descriptive adjective. A lot of words, hungry, silly, beautiful, ugly, pleasant, annoying, all these are descriptive adjectives. Now, adjectives can also show quantity. So, that is the next kind of adjectives that we are going to use, the quantitative adjective. Now, the quantitative adjective actually answers two questions. How much of something? How many of something? The answer to these questions are what will be given through the quantitative adjective. So, like how much? Like all the numbers 1, 20, 30, 3, 4, all these are quantitative adjectives. And if you don't want to specify on the number, you want to just give a much more a general quantity, then we use words like half, many, more, a little bit. These are also qualitative adjectives. So, see, how many children do you have? I have only one daughter. The one there gives you, it's a quantitative adjective. It tells you the number. How many? I have only one daughter. So, one there becomes a quantitative adjective. So, would you like to have more children? Oh yes, I would love to have more children. The more is a more general adjective, but it also, now I want to have many more children. So, many and more, these are also quantitative adjectives. Okay. So, these two we had briefly discussed sometime before. Now, let us go on to what we really want to do this time, and this is the demonstrative adjective. Okay. Now, this is something we haven't covered in the earlier topics. Let us pay attention to how this helps you. Now, a demonstrative adjective helps to indicate a noun or a pronoun in a sentence. Okay? And this is especially helpful when you want to make it clear exactly which person or which thing you are speaking about, and whether the thing you are speaking about is its position near, is it far away from you, is it in singular, is it plural. So, these are the kind of elements that are depicted through a demonstrative adjective. When we use a demonstrative adjective, we will be able to tell the reader, just imagine speaking about a cat. Am I speaking about the cat which is on the couch, or am I speaking about the cat which is on the floor? By using demonstrative adjectives like this and these and that, we are able to tell them exactly where the position and which particular noun or which particular cat or which particular thing we are speaking about. Okay. So, to repeat, demonstrative adjectives emphasize which object we are talking about. Okay. So, let us look at a few examples. Now, if there are a few pies, you can say that pie was delicious. So, we are telling them exactly which one. That pie was delicious. Okay, that tells you about which pie we are exactly talking about. I will first show you what are the common demonstrative adjectives we have. That will make it a little more clearer for you. Okay, the 4 most common adjectives we have are this, that, these and those. Okay, and all these demonstrative adjectives, their position in a sentence, it is just before the noun. These demonstrative adjectives are placed before a noun or a pronoun, and they specifically mean whichever noun or pronoun they are modifying, these demonstrative adjectives are kept just before that in a sentence. Okay. Now, the primary singular form of demonstrative adjectives, one form is this. Okay. So, when we use this is used when we want to speak about a person or a thing that is nearby. This city could not get any better, or this day could not get any better. So, you can actually use that to show something which is nearby or something which is current. Now, you can have the book in your hand and you can show someone and say, oh, this book is really amazing. So, it shows something which is current, something which is nearby. But if you want to show something which is slightly further away, then we can't use the word this. For example, if you want to point out to a book that is slightly far off, now you can't say this book is very interesting. It makes no sense. So, if you want to point out to something that is slightly further away, then the demonstrative adjective we use is that. Do you see that? Do you see that house? Do you see that book? So, when something is further away, we use the demonstrative adjective that. Okay? That house across the street is so beautiful. This is for something close by, that is for something further away. Now, the plural forms of these demonstrative adjectives are the words these and those. This and that stands for the singular, these and those for the plural. Now, if there is more than one thing which is nearby, like when we use this, it was for one thing that was nearby. What if there are multiple things nearby? Then you can't use this. For that, we use the word these. You say, this dog is so adorable. But if there are many dogs, these dogs are so adorable. So, you want to use plural, and for something which is nearby, we use the word these. The next one is those. Those also very similar in function, that is plural, but for something which is further away. Okay, so, you have something that is further away and that is plural, then we use those and not that. So, you can say those houses are very expensive, or those cars are very expensive, which means we are denoting both a plural as well as we are showing that the thing we are pointing out to is a little further away. Okay? So, that is how we use these primary demonstrative adjectives. Now, demonstrative adjectives, along with these adjectives, there are also certain special pairs of demonstratives. Okay? They are, just pay attention to them also, and they are quite interesting. The one is when you write, especially, these demonstrative adjectives are very, very widely used. One is, usually we use the word the one and its complementary word the other. Similarly, we use another one which is called former and latter, about two things that we have already named in the sentence. And this will be clear through an example. Okay? Do I stay in or go out? On the one hand, I have lots of homework to do, but on the other, the weather is too nice to stay indoors. So, you see, on the one hand, on the other. That is one use of the demonstrative adjective. Another very useful one is the sentence like this: our two options are buying a new house or renting a new apartment. The former is preferable for the family, but the latter is less expensive. Now this particular expression, I want you to just pay some attention to it. Former and latter. This is a very, very useful expression in academic writing in English. It really, really helps to make, it gives you a different kind of sentence type. And we always recommend that in exams like the IELTS, using expressions like former and latter. Okay, so this is also one example of a demonstrative adjective, a special case for that matter. Now, if you ask me, can numbers be demonstrative adjectives? Can we use numbers as demonstrative adjectives? It seems slightly funny because we mentioned them as being quantitative adjectives, but here we can use numbers too. As demonstrative adjectives, we can use numbers, that is the ordinal numbers, the ones which come in with a th, fourth, fifth, third. When we use these words, they can also be used as demonstrative. Now let us look at a few examples. The first paycheck I received was for $500, the first. The second one, the seventh day of the week is a Sunday. So in all these sentences you can see an ordinal numeral being used, and that is possible. You can use that as a demonstrative, all serve the purpose of being a demonstrative adjective. In the late 19th century, the Civil War in the United States was fought. After my third piece of pizza, I was stuffed. For her 50th birthday party, we bought my mom a huge cake. So in all these instances, we see how these numbers are used as a demonstrative adjective. Okay, so it's quite simple. You just need to know which the primary ones are, which the exceptions are, and the use of these ordinal numerals, and then it becomes easy. Now we are going on to the next section, which is Lexica, your guide to good vocabulary. In today's episode, what I actually thought was to introduce you to one of the best ways to learn vocabulary. Ideally, it is recommended that you don't take in or learn words individually off a dictionary. It is always best to learn vocabulary contextually, which means read something and then try guessing and understanding the words you see in the script, and if you have any clarifications, you need to go back to a dictionary and kind of see if you can identify the meaning. This is called reading contextually. In fact, this is very good because if you've noticed, people who read a lot generally have a very good vocabulary, and this comes in because there's always this predictive guesses you make even if it's a new word, and you're always trying to understand how to sometimes you read something, you may not have heard of the word before, but you make a guess, you make a predictive guess, you make a guess that okay, this could be the meaning, and that's how you learn and you let new words enter your vocabulary. I am actually going to give you a small passage, and we'll first read through the entire passage, and then as we read, you are going to come across many words, some which you do know, some which you don't. Okay, and as we read, we are going to try to make guesses. Okay, what could be the meaning? Sometimes even if you don't know the meaning, even if the word is unfamiliar to you, you may be able to understand given the context of the essay. So the particular passage is on roads and driving. So I'll just read it out. Then we'll go on to the particular words. Okay, so I'm going to start reading now. I hate driving during rush hours in my city, because the tailback often slows down the traffic. I think the problem is made worse by the fact that there are so many cars that the roads are chock-a-block with traffic. Moreover, many of the roads are very narrow or there are bottlenecks, which also results in traffic blocks. It's quite annoying when the motorists behind you start sounding the horn, and instances of road rage are quite common, especially during the traffic jams. To make matters worse, many youngsters drive so rashly without helmets, often precariously balancing the pillion riders, that it is quite an unsettling sight. Traffic offenders should be penalized in order to avoid accidents and to make our streets safer. So, you see I have read out the entire passage, and you may have come across many words you do understand, many words you have heard of, but don't really understand the context of the meeting. Now, I am going to go back to that passage. Going back to that passage, we are going to see how we can identify the difficult words there. Starting on the first sentence itself. The first sentence goes like this: I hate driving during rush hours in my city. The one word you may be keen to know is what is the meaning of the word rush hours. Those are the peak hours, especially early morning, let us say between 9 to 10:30 or 11, when you have schools being open, office goers, everything that is a rush hour. It happens in the mornings and in the evenings too, after school is over, after people leave their offices. These are the rush hours, okay? Because the tailback often slows down the traffic. Okay, there is another word there, and the word is tailback. What does tailback mean? If you look at it, tailback, like the word suggests, it means a stream of slow moving traffic, one after the other. You see one car, one vehicle after the other, it is like it forms a tailback. Something like slow moving traffic. It is like a tail, one after the other. So, tailback means extremely slow moving traffic. And this slows, and you have a tailback, it completely slows down the traffic. The next word, I think the problem is made worse by the fact that there are so many cars that the roads are chock-a-block with traffic. Chock-a-block means congested, there is too much. It is an informal expression, chock-a-block. This particular neighborhood is chock-a-block with houses. There are so many stacked very close by. A chock-a-block here means one car of so many cars, it is congested that way. The next word, moreover, many of the roads are very narrow. Narrow is the word you describe for roads which are not wide enough. Veedi koranja roads is called narrow. And there are bottlenecks which also result in traffic blocks. Now, bottlenecks means, if you haven't seen how a bottleneck is, it's wide and the base is wide, and then as a neck comes in, it becomes narrow. This is how some of our roads are. It's wide at some point and then it becomes narrow. And when you have a road which is like a bottleneck, at some point traffic will begin to slow down. When it moves from the wide part of the road, moves into the narrow bit, it tends to slow down. They call a bottleneck, a road which is wide and then narrows down. Okay, then it is quite annoying. See, and this results in traffic blocks, which is quite annoying. Annoying means when it irritates you, when you get angry, it irritates you. When the motorists behind is, a motorist could be any person who drives a motor vehicle. So, when there is a traffic block, the motorist behind you keeps sounding his horn. Horn adichondengirikkumbo, it's very annoying. And instances of road rage are quite common. Road rage is when people end up getting angry and there's fights because of this. Someone's honking, someone behind you is annoyed with that. Someone comes and bangs on your car and you say, take the car off. And it's road rage when people get angry because of some condition on the road. And road rage is also very common when there are traffic blocks. During the traffic jams, to make matters worse, and then many youngsters drive so rashly, bhayangara speedlum shraddhayillande odikkumbo drive so rashly. You can also call drive recklessly, drive rashly, that is the word we use there, without helmets, often precariously balancing the pillion riders. Now, the word precariously I threw in because I couldn't think of a simpler word, but that word means balance. That word you can drop, but let us go on to the other word which could be more important. Often precariously balancing the pillion rider. Now, who is a pillion rider? Important to know, because on a bike, the person who sits behind is the pillion rider. And when this person drives very rashly, you can see the pillion rider trying hard to balance on the bike. And it's quite an unsettling sight. Unsettling means when you see people driving so quickly and you see the pillion driver and no helmets, so it's a very unsettling sight. And the next one is traffic offenders. I feel traffic offenders, people who do not obey traffic rules, should be penalized, should be punished. They should either be given a fine or there should be some kind of penalty given to people who do not follow traffic rules. And a word penalized, to avoid accidents and make our streets safer. So, you see how many words that we could pick up from a small passage. You saw words like tailback, bottleneck, pillion rider, annoying, road rage. You also saw so many words that came in, and this is how you need to learn words through the context. Okay. With that, we are moving on to the third section of today's episode, and that is, let's say it right. This is your guide to good pronunciation. In today's episode, I've got a few words which are slightly similar sounding, but which have to be pronounced distinctly. The pronunciation is distinctly different. Okay, so we have two words. One is human, H-U-M-A-N, human, and the other word is H-U-M-A-N-E. There's just one addition of a letter. But then the pronunciation is very different. One is human. Human refers to all of us as Homo sapiens. We are all humans. The other word is humane. Humane means when you show pity and kindness to other people, to animals, when you treat people and animals with kindness, it's called having a very humane attitude. So, human, humane. Now, we have another two words. One is surgeon, S-U-R-G-E-O-N, surgeon. The other word is S-E-R-G-E-A-N-T. So, surgeon, of course, you know who a surgeon is. A surgeon is a doctor who performs a surgery or an operation. The other word is not sergeant, it is sergeant. Okay, surgeon, sergeant, and sergeant refers to a rank in the military or in the marines. That is a rank. The next word, west and waste. Of course, you know the meaning of both those words. West is a direction, waste is rubbish or something like that. So, leftovers or rubbish. West and waste. Now, look at this next set of words, can be slightly confusing. One is D-I-A-R-Y, diary. Diary, diary. Diary is kind of a book that you keep to make some note of, record appointments, and that's called a diary. But you might see another word with slight difference in pronunciation. If this is D-I-A-R-Y, the other one is D-A-I-R-Y. This is it's not a diary, it is a dairy. So, one is diary, the other is dairy. And dairy refers to a building or a room where you process and store and distribute milk and milk products. That is a dairy. That is not a diary, it is a dairy. Okay. It can also be a small shop which sells these milk products. So, this distinction between both these words, one is diary, the other is dairy. So, this is how these words which look very, very similar, but have very different pronunciations. It is important to note the slight subtle differences in the pronunciation of these words. Okay. Our final section where we help you with conversation, and it's titled Let's Talk. So, here we have a conversation between two friends, Sandra and Blessy. And this word, I have kind of used this to relate it to the vocabulary we discussed before on traffic and how you drive and all. It's a similar area I have taken to expand into a conversation. So, Sandra and Blessy are having a conversation. Sandra says, Blessy, how do you commute to work? Commute means do you go by a bus, by a train? Do you go by your own vehicle? How do you commute? Commute means traveling to and fro to a place. How do you commute to work? And Blessy says, I drive. It's more convenient than relying on public transport. Okay. And then Sandra says, but I am sure the traffic must be really bad on your way back home. And she says, oh yes, and Blessy responds to that, oh yes, it is so very annoying. I dread the rush hour traffic. It takes me almost an hour to reach home. So, annoying the word we used in the vocabulary also, which means irritating, frustrating, all those. It's very annoying. It makes you get angry. It's very annoying. And she also says, I dread. Rush hour traffic dread the rush hour. Rush hour also is another word which we used in the vocabulary. I dread the rush hour traffic. I take an hour to reach home. Okay. And then Sandra says, sometimes I wonder what can be done about this. Sometimes I wonder what can be done about this. Look at the way that the expression comes in. Sometimes I wonder what can be done about this. And Blessy says perhaps we have wider roads, underpasses, flyovers, metro rails. So, Blessy gives a whole lot of suggestions. Perhaps if we could have wider roads. Earlier we spoke about narrow roads, the opposite of that, wider roads. So, there is less of congestion on the roads. Have a few flyovers, underpasses, so that there is a little more ease in traffic flow. And Sandra says better still if we could carpool or perhaps use bicycles. Now, Sandra has a more eco-friendly alternative. She says, wouldn't it be better if we could carpool? Carpooling means when people who are going to one single destination, they could all, instead of taking individual cars, they could all pool together and go in one car. Okay, so you have a group of friends staying close by and all of you are perhaps going to a similar destination to work. You could all pool together in one car and go. It's called carpooling. Or perhaps use bicycles. Blessy says, yeah, I guess that's right too. That's how Blessy responds to Sandra's suggestion. And with that, the conversation ends. So, you've seen I've tried to bring in a few words from the vocabulary bit into this conversation too, so you can learn how to use them effectively. So, with this we come to an end of today's episode. I hope you enjoyed the episode and there will be takeaways that you could use when you speak and write in English. Thank you so much.